In this lesson, we're going to cover camera animation. Now, the first way to add an animation to a camera is through the timeline. You can access the timeline by clicking on the animation button in the main toolbar. From there, you can click on Animation Wizard, and you can choose to add a camera animation. You can choose from an orbit, a zoom, an inclination, and a translation. And as you can see, whichever method is selected, a preview of what that will do to the camera is shown. Once you're happy with your type, you can select Next, and that type will be added to your currently active camera. The other way is by adding an animation through the project window in the scene tree. I'll create a new camera by right-clicking on the cameras list and select Add Camera. Next, I'll rename it to Camera Animation 1. And what we can do at this point is add an animation to it. Now, one other important thing to understand about the cameras list is the currently active camera will be indicated by a blue icon. Notice the others are gray. This tells me that we're currently looking through Camera Animation 1 camera. So let's right-click on it and we'll add an orbit. And if we look in our timeline, we can see an orbit has been added. And if we scrub the timeline, we can see the effect of that orbit animation. Now, once your camera animation has been added, you can move your camera around and you can position it in different ways. But once you play back your animation, it will reset back to its original position that it was in when you actually added the animation to the camera. Now, this is to prevent messing up your animations and changing things unintentionally when you had it already set up. Now, if you do want to change something about your camera's position, you can do so by going into edit mode. You can do so by right-clicking on and selecting Edit Camera, or under the Camera tab, you can enter Edit Mode. Notice now when I'm in Edit Mode, along the bottom it says Editing Camera Animation 1 Camera. So, I can make changes to the camera now, and when I press Done, those changes will be applied. Now, if you notice, the orbit wasn't actually occurring around the center of the model. So what I'd like to do is change the look at point of the camera so that it orbits around the center of the model. I can do so by selecting the look at point, or I can press Ctrl-Alt, right-click on a part, and that's going to change the orbit point of the camera. So now, if we play back our animation, it should be orbiting directly around the point that I selected as the look at. So if we move the camera and play back our animation, you can see it resets. Now, just like animations in the timeline, you can scale camera animations and you can reposition them in time. So if you want camera animations to occur quicker or later in time, you can do so by simply shifting them in the timeline. Let's add another camera animation. So we can right-click on the camera, and in this case we can add an inclination. So that will start to shift the camera's view up. We can control the inclination in degrees. So the more we adjust this value, the more that inclination will have an effect. And as you make changes, of course, all the changes are shown in the real-time view. You can also add motion easing to your animations, and if you hover over, it will give you a preview of what that is. And if you're not sure about what motion easing actually does, you can see the section on motion easing in the animation section of the manual, which is found in Help, Online Manual, or you can check out the tutorial on motion easing. Now, I can always disable the inclination so that the inclination is still applied to the camera, but it's disabled so you no longer see the effect that it has. So now we're just viewing the orbit. We can add a zoom by right-clicking, selecting zoom, and of course we can control the distance of that zoom. So if we want to get further in, we can continue to click this, And now we should have a camera orbit and a zoom occurring all in the same motion. And if we enable our inclination, that will take that animation into account as well. Okay, so that's a look at camera animation in KeyShot 3.